Hello, welcome to Pyramid Knits. My name is Liz. I am a knitter and a natural dyer based outside of Taos, New Mexico in the southwestern United States. This is my little podcast where I talk about the crafty things that I've been up to, my thoughts on craft and life and things. I often garden, I often bake, I often get out into the outdoors, and I like to share those things as well. I try to do these podcasts about once a month and kind of check in with what I have been up to and how things are sort of changing seasonally. I will get to that in a second. So if you want to be notified about these videos, please hit the little subscribe button wherever that may be on your device. If you want to find me elsewhere on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram and also on Etsy as Pyramid Dye Works. I sell my naturally dyed yarns over there if you are interested. Again, with the seasonality, really hoping that I can start dyeing things again soon. It is still winter here in the mountains of northern New Mexico. It really felt like spring this last week. Like it really did. It was up in the 50s. I was starting to see little green bits coming up out of the ground. Tulip shoots and things were coming up. Very, very exciting. And then all of a sudden I woke up today. I had all of these plans to go into town, to do some work. I had a lot of things to get done today. And whenever I woke up, I said, oh my, it's snowing. And as I got out of bed, it had just started snowing. The ground was still bare. Yeah, now we've gotten about 8 inches or so. So winter is not gone yet, very much. Yeah, the wind is whipping. I'm watching the snow just like fly off of the trees and just go with the wind. Oy. Yeah, so I ended up with a snow day and figured, hey, this is a great opportunity to podcast. I've made myself a nice chai tea. It is absolutely delicious. I added a nice big dollop of local honey, a little half and half, and just a little pinch of some vanilla extract that I have had steeping in my pantry. And it is just all the warm, cozy things. I'm really enjoying it. I also have one of my whips here in my lap. I'm going to attempt to knit and chat at the same time. I find it's easier to chat that way. Of course, this is what's happening with the end of this yarn. It's all tangled. So of course, I'm just going to sit down and untangle my yarn in front of you because that's exciting, isn't it? Oh, good Lord. Okay, well, I got a little bit untangled enough that I can just knit for a minute. So I am working on my Zoom socks here. These are knit out of Knit Picks Felici in the colorway Beatnik. I will show you. I have one sock completed. Really fun colorway. I love all of these colors. It's such a fun yarn. Self-striping is so addictive. You just keep going and say, oh, I just want to get to the end of this color, just to the end of this color. And it really knits up quite quickly. I did a standard sock recipe on this. I have said it before, I'll say it again. I don't ever knit pattern socks. If you have been watching for a long time, you will know that I do have pattern socks that are a work in progress. And they have been a work in progress for a very, very long time. They're just so fiddly. It just gets too fiddly for me. One day I will finish those fancy cabled socks, but in the meantime, I'm going to crank out just some 3x1 rib socks because that's a lot easier. I do toe up, German short row heel. That's it. I did a little 1x1 rib at the top to help cinch it in a little bit more, and I did a tubular bind off, which is looking a little bit flared, but that's okay. I did put this sock on and just wear one sock around the house for a while, right after I finished it, so I think it just got a little stretched out. They haven't been washed or blocked or anything. So that's my first sock. I've got my second one on the go. Yeah, I've just been working on this during Zoom meetings, like you do, under the table, and nobody's the wiser. So what to talk about today, huh? I have one finished object, but I don't have it with me. I had started it last time I showed it to you guys, and it was just started. Like, I think I had cast it on that morning, which was a infinity scarf snood cowl thing that I knit for a coworker who's moving on to a new job. I knit it up out of some of my own yarn that I dyed with indigo. It was a wool alpaca blend with little tweedy nips in it. Really, really pretty. I got a nice dark blue on it. I don't have great pictures either because, true to form, I was finishing it up the morning of her going away partying, and I didn't really get finished object photos. I wrapped it up and I was like rushing out the door, like trying to wrap up this present before I left. And then I was like, I haven't taken any pictures. Oh no. So I took a couple pictures of it already wrapped up. So I'll put those in here. She was very, very happy and grateful recipient. She is a weaver herself, so I know that she understands, which is why I was happy to knit her a gift. I'm not usually super big on gift knitting, and I was reminded on this project why I'm not super big into gift knitting, because I don't do deadlines. Not for my knitting projects anyway. I don't like the pressure, you know. And then I got into that situation where it's like she has her going away party, like I have to give it to her then, otherwise she's not going to get it. And I'm like, I have to get through an entire skein of yarn in like 3 days, which is Aran weight yarn. And I was knitting on, oh gosh, I can't even remember now. I think size US 8 needles. I have no idea what that is. Maybe 6mm, 5.5 or something. I'll look it up. Anywho. So it did go pretty quickly, and I really, really love the pattern. It's super addictive, super meditative. It's this lovely knit purl repeat that's pretty short, and I mean, as you can see with the actual pattern, it's like kind of knit purl reflections of each other, you know? And I kept feeling whenever I was knitting it that it was so meditative, that each little knit section was like an inhale, and then the purl section was like an exhale. Inhale and exhale, inhale and exhale. So I really did enjoy knitting it, although I was feeling the pressure at the end, which is no fun whenever you're knitting. And, you know, my hands were tired. Given no deadlines, I would have set it aside for a couple of days and gone back to it for a couple of days, and set it aside for a couple of days and gone back to it for a couple of days, and I would have finished it in another week, you know. But I was like, I have to get it done. So I was just knitting on the same project for like 3 or 4 days straight, maybe more like 5 or 6 days straight. Anyway, it was a lot of knitting. Totally worth it. She was very, very happy. So yeah. And that's my only FO. However, so, you know, spring is threatening to be here someday. I was feeling the spring, and I also saw a couple of those little golden moths in my house. Oh my gosh. and they were flying out of the area where I keep all of my whips, and it's like, oh, that's not good. So I did a good tossing of that whole area. It really, really needed it. And went through all of my whips and all of my baskets and all of my project bags and wiped everything down and put new little cedar sachets and all that good stuff. So it's feeling much better now. But while I was going through that process, I was like, oh, look at my mending pile. Wouldn't it be good if I didn't just put my mending pile back up on the shelf and I actually mended the things in my mending pile? So I did that this morning. I fixed like 4 or 5 projects, and it took me the length of 1 cup of coffee. And how long have these things been just like sitting around and languishing and I haven't been able to wear them? Like, come on. So I'm going to show you what I mended this morning. So, because that's kind of like a finished object. They're like back in rotation now. So just get through this row. So first up, I fixed these little mitts. I knit these mitts absolutely forever ago. I made them up. There is no pattern. I did actually write up a pattern at one point, but I never did anything with it. And I love them. They have been like my go-to mitts for, oh God, I mean, probably 10 years, close to 10 years. That can't even be true. That cannot be true. Oh my God. I don't have a Ravelry page for them either. Maybe 8 years. I don't know. They've been rocking for a long time. They are knit out of Knit Picks Wool of the Andes. The colorway is Spruce. So talk about a workhorse yarn. I mean, 8 years, and I wore these things all the time. I mean, you can tell on the palm, they're like pretty felted there. And I just finally had my very first hole in these because I wore them hiking the other day. And I was using poles. So I was gripping and it was just rubbing right here. And one of the sides, it rubbed through and one stitch fell down, just one. So I went in and I picked it back up and just repaired along the top. I actually still had some of this yarn kicking around in my stash too. So yeah, good as new. They're ready to go again. Wool of the Andes holds up. Who knew, right? I mean, I don't think I didn't really like ride a bike in these, but I always wore these like whenever I was driving. So there was a lot of friction on the palms. And yeah, they don't look worn like hardly at all. They look almost brand new. It's crazy. So yeah, these are back in rotation. Another mitt from my early knitting days. This is my very first color work ever. What? First time doing color work. I don't know how it's showing up on camera. It probably looks better on camera than in person. It looks very muddled to me in person. And there's so many mistakes in it. I'm looking at the palm and I'm just like, oh yeah, there's like a bunch of mistakes. So I had never done color work before. I had never knit a mitten before. Yeah, I just kind of jumped in on the deep end. And catch this, flip top and individual fingers. Like, I think I just didn't even know that this was such an undertaking because I was so inexperienced whenever I made these. That, you know, what you don't know can't hurt you. I don't think that's how that goes. Ignorance is bliss. Maybe that's the right one. So the thing that happened with these is my thumb blew out. And that has happened on these mitts on both of them, I think once or twice. Maybe it's just happened on both of them and I already repaired the other one or something like that. And yeah, like clearly I did not do the join between the thumb hole very well. Like I just didn't really know what I was doing and how to close up those gaps. I do know now. I also know you can just sew it up with an end if it looks like that. Yeah. So I just, yeah, went in there and just sewed up that hole and now they're good to go again. The yarn I used for these was also a Knit Picks. It's a wool and silk blend and I can't remember gloss. It's the gloss fingering and I think the yellow is called Honey. How am I remembering this? And the neutral, it's like doe or fawn or something, or deer. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so these have been kicking around for probably 10 years. They were my other pair of go-tos. Like for real, I just cycled between these two sets forever. I finally knit myself a new pair of mittens last winter, but before that it was just like one of these for years and years and years. And they did me well. They did me very well. Yeah, so again, back in rotation. These do need a wash, I can tell. They're pretty, looking a little haggard. The other mitt I think is still in my basket by the door, so I'll have to dig that out and give these a wash-a-doodle. And then I have another pair of nice cozy mitts. And because it does have all of the individual fingers and the fold over and it's got the silk in it, they really are quite warm. For, you know, my first color work on a small circumference, which I didn't know that was like harder. With the flip top, I'd never like picked up stitches like that before. And, you know, first mitten all over. I'm still wearing them. It's amazing. All right. And then I repaired 3 garments back in rotation. Okay. So this one is a little bit crazy. A little bit bright. It's one of my summer knits. It is a yarn that I bought on impulse when I was down in Austin, Texas visiting. And it is a local Texas dyer. Sorry, I was just checking my fix. It looked like I didn't fix it right. It's fine. And it was a local Texas dyer and it came in just like a massive honking skein of like 800 plus yards or something. It's like a heavy lace, light fingering. It's a light fingering, really. And it's one of those things, I bought it on impulse because I was like, I'll find something to do with it. I'll just find something. And it took, you know, 2 or 3 years to finally find a pattern that I was like, okay, I think I could actually make something that'll fit me from that yardage. And this is the, oh dear, Seaboard tank by Tonis Fiber Arts, I think. Right down there. And yeah, the yarn is from Yarn Carnival. I don't recall the colorway name, but it was something outrageous, I'm sure. So this got a hole in it at some point somehow, and then it went into the mending bag. There was a mending bag at that point. And then it got transferred to a mending basket and then to another mending bag and then to this mending basket. So this has been sitting around in the bottom of dark spaces for years now. It's true. It's true. So the one hole turned into quite a few holes because those pesky little moths did find this at a certain point over those number of years. So I have fixed them all though. This is it's like a reversible top, so there's not really a front or a back, but now this is the front because the top of this side still looks good. It's on the bottom that I made a repair. I know, I'm like, can I even find it? Yeah, it's like halfway down, right in here. There was a little break in the yarn, so I just had to duplicate stitch and rejoin. And I have not, you know, blocked or washed any of this. I just did this morning. There were also situations where I had like really big snags, so I just kind of evened those back out. Living in a house with 2 dogs and 2 cats, my knitwear does get snagged quite often. We'll get to more of that too. And then on the back side, which is now the back side, there were quite a few more issues on this side. There were a couple little spots right here at the edge that I had to just fix. So that's a little bit visible, but that'll be on the back side. So that's not such a big deal. And then the biggest hole was right here, which spanned like 2 whole rows. So I actually did a little woven patch right there. So that is a little bit more noticeable. It puckers a little bit, but like even so, it's not that bad. And that's on the back, like all that's going to be under my hair. So no biggie. Yeah, and same thing. There were a couple other little spots where there was just like one strand that got like one little stitch that broke and I had to go over. But back in rotation. With the caveat that whenever I knit this, I was quite a bit thinner. So it's not really back into rotation because it doesn't really fit me anymore. Yeah. So the next 2 repairs, so we've got 2 wear repairs, wear on my hands repairs, 1 moth situation repair, and the next 2 are pet situation repairs. So this is my Widow's Kiss sweater. It's patterned by Colman. It's got to be probably my favorite sweater that I have. And let me see if I can even find it now. See, that's always a good sign whenever it's like, I don't know if I can even find it. Anyway, my dog has some separation anxiety. Maybe it's on the other arm. And when I came home, oh yeah, there it is. Whenever I came home one day, he was just really, really excited and he jumped up and he snagged a strand on my sweater and it just popped. So I had one little hole, and you can see the little end of the original thread of yarn is still kind of sticking out there, but I just did a duplicate stitch and you cannot even see it. It's totally invisible except for that little guy that's just poking out. Yeah, I mean, other than that, it's you can't see it. And so that's good. And also this is knit out of Elsa wool, which is a woolen spun, non-superwash. So it's a really easy yarn to kind of make those repairs because it sticks to itself a little bit more. So it just snagged that one stitch and I wasn't worried about it at all because I'm like, I know that this yarn is going to stick to itself pretty well. So that one stitch isn't really going anywhere. I actually even wore the sweater again before I fixed it because I was going out for a walk with the dogs. And I was like, oh, I just need to throw it on. But I was like, the stitch isn't going anywhere. It's fine. But now it's fixed, so I don't have to worry about it. And this can go back into my regular rotation. That is as opposed to like fixing this, which is a very, very slippery, thin, superwash merino. I actually made a couple of these holes worse whenever I was trying to just thread the yarn through the first couple of stitches, because if it pulled on it a little bit, it would just go it's like, oh no. I had to be quite delicate whenever I was fixing this one. And then one more, and this is also knit out of superwash. Again, from my earlier knitting days, whenever I didn't know that color work out of superwash isn't the best idea, I also steeked the neckline here. I did a crochet reinforcement, never had an issue. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, so this pattern is the Northdale by Gudrun Johnston. You might see these little dealies here on the front. These are snags that I have not pulled back through. Animals and superwash yarn. What are you going to do? You're going to not knit things out of superwash yarn. That's what you're going to do. And you'll see my first big whip is out of superwash yarn. Anywho, same kind of situation with this. I'm not sure actually what happened, but I had like 3 holes like right in a row down here. So either it was from an animal like jumping up and snagging, or I was wearing it outside and it snagged on a branch or something. I don't know what happened. But you almost can't even see. It's like here, here, and here. And I did not have the original yarn for this anymore. Everything else, I still had little bits of the original yarn, so I was able to use that. For this one, I used some of my own hand-dyed yarn that I dyed with avocado. That is a really lovely gray. Yeah, so I used this to do the repair. I mean, it's almost like a spot-on match for that gray. It's really, really close. So that was handy. And yeah, I just stitched those up with some duplicate stitch. I didn't even try to deal with doing it on the back because you can't tell what's going on with all these floats. And snags, more snags. But yeah, so that is fixed now, and this is back in rotation, which is great because, I mean, really, those are like 2 of my most worn sweaters, I think, is this Northdale and this Widow's Kiss. Oh, so much yummy sweatery goodness. Oh. And I'm also realizing that I never talked about the sweater that I'm wearing today. Yeah, like I said, it started snowing this morning a lot. And I live in a passive solar house. So if the sun's not out, I don't have any heat. So I was debating, should I make a fire? Should I not make a fire? I was still in my pajamas at this point. So I went ahead, I got dressed. I decided to put on my Wolf River sweater by Melissa Schaschwary, I think is her name. And I knit this out of Cascade's EcoWool. It's a pretty scratchy yarn, but since this has this lace pattern, I have to wear a shirt underneath it anyway, so it's not really an issue. But it's a bulky or an Aran, I'm not sure which one it is classified as, but it's quite a thick yarn. I think I knit this on size 9 or 10 US, and it's really warm. It's really warm. Even with all the lace, it's a really warm sweater. So I put this on and I was like, I don't want to make a fire. Like, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I did start a pot of chicken stock, so that has been keeping things a little warmer. And now that it's the afternoon, the sun has come out, and it is spilling into my home and warming things up. And I'm probably going to have to take this sweater off after I'm done recording this podcast because I'm going to be too hot. Yeah, so that's finished objects, mending finished objects, and finished objects wearing finished objects. And I have another finished object, which is a spinning finished object. I showed this to you guys last time whenever I had the sinkles on the bobbins. And this is the yarn that I took all the way from the raw fleece off the animal, like dirty fleece. I washed it, I dyed it, I carded it, I spun it, and it is this. Oh, I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. And I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this. This was really, you know, an experiment with myself to kind of see what would happen if I tried to design a yarn from nothing. And it turned out really lovely. It turned out really lovely. I'm thinking it might be good as like a color work of a sweater or something, like a yoke. Because I have about 120 odd yards here, and it's 56 grams. So it's 100, so that'd be, yeah, that's like a DK. So I'd say like a sport to a DK is probably what we're at here. You know, it's not the most consistent. I'm not the best spinner in the world. I have been spinning for almost 2 years now, but not super consistently. So yeah, I took this, the black in this is natural alpaca. It's natural black alpaca, and everything else is from CVM fleece, which was white, and then, you know, cleaned, divvied up. I had some fleece dyed with indigo, some dyed with madder, some dyed with Osage orange. What else? There is some natural white in here as well. Oh, I had some dyed with marigold in here. So there's all sorts of good, beautiful colors. Oh, yeah. Super, super satisfying. I cannot wait to knit with this, but I want it to be for something special, and it's such little yardage. You know, it's not even enough to like make a hat or something. And it's got to be the yoke of a sweater, right? It has to be. But what color do I put it with? I was holding it up like this earlier, and I was like, oh, it actually looks nice with like a dark brown. Maybe I could do like a walnut dye yarn for the main color or something. I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah. So yeah, so on the dye front, it is starting to feel springy. I got out in my dye studio last week on one of the very springy days, and I do rainwater catchment for all of my dyes because natural dyes are quite reactive to minerals and additives with water. And honestly, I'm on well water, and I have used well water for my natural dyes, and I haven't noticed any adverse color effects from my water. So I think I'm pretty safe to just use water out the tap as well. But for, you know, the overall principle of the thing, I want to be water-wise with my natural dyeing, so I do have rainwater catchment set up so I can use that as my primary source for my dye water and my rinse water. And I do live up in the mountains. I'm not actually like in the mountains, I'm next to the mountains, but quite high elevation. We get snow, it gets cold. And I have this big catchment system, and it was just frozen solid. Like hundreds of gallons of water just frozen solid. So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be doing any work out here for a little while. You know, obviously it's winter, like even if it's a nice day out, you still don't really want to be outside like doing dye stuff whenever it's, you know, 30 degrees, even if it is sunny. So yeah, so I went out there the other day on one of the warm days, and I gave my rainwater catchment a little push, and sure enough, it moved, and you could hear all the ice sloshing around it. I was like, okay, cool, cool. That means it's time. It's almost time. And you know, even though we're getting this snow, it's not that cold out. And I have a feeling all the snow is probably going to be melted in the next couple of days anyhow. So hopefully I still will be able to get out there for the first time in the next couple of weeks, for the first time since the fall. I've been thinking about a lot of ideas for dyes and different colors and different ways to do it. And I have been talking with a local farm here that I've been working with, Virsylvia farm up in Questa, New Mexico, and they have fiber animals and get their own yarn spun, and I have been doing the dyes for them, doing natural dyes, and often locally foraged dyes too, which is great, so that it's like a truly like 100% local product, which is just amazing. There's a fiber mill that's just over the mountain from here. I don't know how many miles, but it's probably a 45-minute drive, just because you have to go over the mountain. It's not that far. Everybody measures distance in time in the American West because everything is just spread out. Yeah. So anyway, that's going to be super, super cool. They've got a lot of fiber in the queue at the fiber mill. So that should be coming back to them in the spring and the summer. So I'll have lots of yarn to dye with them. And I have also been searching for new bases. I really want to get a US based base, if at all possible, just to try and, you know, reduce a little bit of a carbon footprint and, you know, try and keep those supply chains simple, not too complex. Anyway, I just went off on a little bit of a ramble there. I do have one work in progress. Well, two if you count this, but I already showed that to you. I have one knitting work in progress that I did have last time, but I've made quite a bit of progress on it. This is my sweater hug. The pattern is from Schaschwary Knits, and I am knitting it out of La Bien-Aimée Merino DK in the colorway Grello, and it's gorgeous, and it is a sweater hug. It's great. I'm very excited. I was kind of worried that I was going to run out of yarn, so the body is a little bit short. It's knit per pattern, and it is a superwash yarn, and it's a heavy superwash yarn. So I'm anticipating it to grow quite a bit. So I'm still on the fence about the length of this, even though it's all finished with the ribbing and the nice split hem and everything. But I am almost done with this first sleeve, and I'm gonna have plenty of yarn. I'm probably gonna have 25 or 30 grams left over after I finish this other sleeve. And I've already done the neckline because I wanted to make sure I had enough yarn for that as well. So I'm gonna finish the thing, I'm gonna block it, and then I'm gonna check the length, and I might go back in and add some length above the ribbing. And it is a split hem. I could do something crazy and, you know, go in, cut the work, go in and insert a section of knitting, graft it back together. But I honestly kind of enjoy knitting 2x2 color work, 2x2 rib. It's nice and kind of rhythmic to me, and I actually really enjoy doing these hems. So if I decide I'm going to add extra, this is also top down, which means I can very easily just unravel the hem, knit a little extra, and redo the ribbing, which, you know, whatever. Not such a big deal. So I'm very happy about that. That it'll be easy to add in some length because I really want to use all of the yarn. I don't want to waste anything because it's such a splurge of a yarn. Oh my gosh. But I mean, it's superwash merino, which is, you know, I'm trying to stay away from superwashes. I know, like snags. There's already snags on this. It's not even done yet. Like, come on. Animals. What was I saying? Oh dear. Superwash. Oh yeah, it's so soft. Oh my gosh. It is just gonna be a sweater hug. It's gonna be great. Yeah, so I really want to get this done because once I get this done, I can cast on another project, which I need to get done before I go on a trip to Scotland to go hiking through the Highlands. And I need a knit vest for that, like stat. I've got the yarn, I've got the pattern picked out. I leave at the end of April. I've told myself I can't cast on the vest until I am done with my sweater hug, so I need to finish that, like, now. I keep thinking of other things that I like want to knit for this trip, and I just don't have the time. I just don't have the time. I'm like, oh, I should knit like a new pair of fingerless mitts, and it's like, no, just take these. You know, oh, I should knit a new hat. Like, no, just take the hat you have. Oh, I should knit some hiking socks. Like, no, just go to REI and get some hiking socks. You don't have time. Oh dear. Hey guys, it's Liz from the future here. It's been about a week and a half since I recorded that podcast. I think just like, I just didn't have the mental capacity to like deal with the footage. Myself, I'm sure like most of you out there, nervous system is a little bit stressed out right now with the state of the world and everything that's going on. And yeah, editing a podcast and watching myself talk about yarn was not at the top of my list. But yeah, I just wanted to pop back in and update you because I have finished my sweater hug. I'm wearing it. It's super comfy cozy. Yeah, I mean, I already talked about this in this episode, so I don't have to like tell you everything all over again. But I did say that I was worried I was going to run out of yarn, but then I was like, oh no, I weighed it and it's fine. I'm going to have like a ton left over and have like extra to be able to put extra length on the body. So yeah, whenever I started the sleeves, I had exactly one skein of yarn left, which was really convenient, I guess. Anyway, so I was like, okay, one sleeve can be 50 grams and the other sleeve can be 50 grams and I'll be good. And so I knit my first sleeve and I weighed my cake and I had like 70 grams left or something. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I'm totally gonna have extra yarn left and I can add in a little bit of length to the body. Fantastic. And then I was knitting the second sleeve and I was getting down, you know, still had a ways to go on the sleeve and I was like, it doesn't look like there's actually that much yarn left. And I think I was actually already into the second cuff when the ball band label, which I had tucked inside the cake whenever I wound up the ball, emerged as the yarn went down, and I was like, oh no, I weighed that with the label in it. So then there was a moment of intense panic where I was like, oh my God, am I gonna actually run out of yarn like right here? I did not. I did still have my swatch that I could have torn into, but I did not have to. I probably have about 10 yards left on that last skein and my swatch, and otherwise I used up every bit of yarn that I had for this, which was my goal. So very happy about that. Yep, sweater hug, love it. Yeah, so I guess now this is the end of the episode. I did film some on a little walk hike I took with my dogs the other day out at the Rio Grande Gorge. So I'll share some of that footage with you here at the end. It was a pretty good view. And I'll see you guys next time.